Hey everyone, my name is Timo, you're watching Timber Timo. In the last episode of this shop build project, we did start building a floor level over my shop by removing those two massive pieces of timber from the framing structure. And in this episode we will be installing all the new floor beams we need to close that big gap in that floor level and level all the other beams on the other side of that floor level. For those of you who are new to my channel and couldn't follow along, we are doing all this because I'm on a mission to build my shop in that barn part of the building I'm living in with my family. But so far there's no real floor level in here, which means we have to create one to have a ceiling over the head. This is important for heating the shop and having good noise cancelling that will hopefully be good enough to protect my neighbors from all that noise I'm going to make in here. If all this appears compelling to you, consider subscribing and stay with us. But let's get started with leveling that floor now. The first thing I did to do this was setting up this rotating leveling laser, which produces a very well leveled laser line. I did it in a way that I did just place it a couple of inches above the already existing floor beams on some random height. With the help of this laser line, I could find the lowest point in that floor level, which was right here. It was exactly 29.5 centimeters beneath my laser mark. I did prepare an animation that shows all that in more detail. For this animation I did cut the floor level along this line and we will be watching from that angle. This is the middle cross beam all the existing and future floor beams sit or will sit on. And those are the existing floor beams. This is the laser line of the leveling laser, which is a couple of inches above the floor beams on a random height. And right here is that lowest point of all the floor beams. That point is exactly 29.5 centimeters lower than the laser line. This means that the bottom side of all the new floor beams we are going to install now will be exactly on that line 29.5 centimeters underneath the laser line. In that way we will have a well leveled ceiling above the shop. And since all the new beams have the same height of about 10 inches, the top side of this floor level is leveled as well. Which means that the bottom side of all the floor beams we are going to install now will also be 29.5 centimeters underneath this laser mark. This means to us in our leveling process that all we have to do now is take the measurement from this laser mark to the beam where the new floor beam is gonna sit on later and take the difference to this 29.5, and this will give us the cutout notch on the bottom side of the new floor beam, the same like the guys did it back in the days with this floor beam. In this case right here, the distance from the beam to the laser line is 26 centimeters, which means that the difference to 29 would be 3.5 centimeters and the cutout on the bottom of the floor beam has to be 3.5 centimeters. All we have to do now to level that whole floor level is run around the floor level once and take all those measurements on all the places a new floor beam is going to sit on one of these old cross beams later. Write that measurement down, and if we are then going to install this floor beam later, all we have to do is look up for that measurement, make the cutout on the bottom side of the new floor beam and place the new floor beam. After all the laser leveling was done, I could install the beams. And I started with cutting those notches on the bottom side of the beams, which were responsible for the leveling in the end. So I was just checking my work on this side of the beams, which will be the middle of the room later, and it turns out I have some high spots in here, which means I probably didn't do the best job leveling with this laser device I had. And this will probably be because that beam is so off level that, yeah, even if I measured just a few centimeters on the wrong side, I was off by almost half a centimeter in height, which I have to fix now. I didn't want to deinstall those guys to do that because, yeah, they are quite heavy. I was all by myself and I did already screw them in on one side. So that's why I came up with my multi-tool leveling method, which worked very well. Now I finally solved my leveling issues here and can start to put the beams in place on this side as well. And to secure them, I use some big ass 8x300mm screws. Some of them could just be screwed in. Others needed a bit more attention. This guy, for example, was very crooked, and I used those clamps to pull him in place. After that was done, I could secure him with a big screw. And the piece of wood on top helped keeping it in this position. That was the last floor beam on this side of the floor, and I called the day. So I could yesterday finally finish this portion of the floor beam structure. It took me longer than I expected or hoped it would take me, and yeah, part of it was that I had to do more work on leveling the beams after I kind of screwed up with the laser, and I did leave a little hole in here so I can attach a ledge or something later to have still access to that upper floor here if I should ever need it. So I will show you real quick how this finally turned out. So I did attach all the new beams to those old ones over here, and yeah, I used 8x180mm full threaded screws to attach them on that side, and they all rest on this big beam there. And over on the other side, I did also fix them in that beam, also with a big 8mm screw. And once I made that other side, which I will start today, I will also connect this beam and the beam on the other side together later, so that will last forever. I just finished putting in a new leveled floor structure on the side of the room where no floor existed at all so far, which means I can now focus on leveling the already existing floor structure on the other side of the room. And I will now show you how I approach that. This is that already mentioned other side of the floor. You can see that there are beams in that side and there are floor planks on them, and yeah, the thing we have to do is we have to level all this. This is all completely off level, and we want to have it leveled on top and on the bottom in the end. And I thought the simplest way to do that is attaching the same kind of beams we did use on the other side of the building to those already existing floor beams in a way that they will later stick out underneath and above them, and then we can plank it from underneath and from above also if it should ever be needed, and have one leveled good floor. The first thing we had to do is removing all those old floor blanks. I will keep all of them and reuse them for another project in my shop. After some renovation, those old fir planks will have exactly the look that it fits in an old barn building like this one. Once those planks were stored away, I could start putting the timber beams in. I made the cutouts on the bottom for leveling in the same way I did it on the other side, and pulled and pushed and dragged them into place. After I had two of them in position, I fixed them to the other timber beam with some big screws. Installing the first two of them was a big pain in the ass. But the rest was just like a walk in the park. I have to say, I'm pretty happy with how all this went so far, even though there's one thing that didn't work out like I hoped it would. I bought the highest timber beams I could get in that thickness and was hoping they would be high enough to cover the difference in height between the lowest and the highest point of the old floor level. But they didn't, which means I will need to put some thinner strips of wood on top of all the new floor beams if I should ever want to plank the floor level from the top. But even if, it would be a pretty quick and cheap thing to do, and it's not bothering me too much since I couldn't have done it differently anyways. Alright, that's about it for today. I really hope you liked that video. If so, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. That really helps a lot. In the next episode of this shop build project, we will go ahead and close the whole floor level from underneath and do some insulation for noise cancelling and better heating. But before we do that, I will make an episode about this hammer. Not this one in particular, even if that guy would have some stories to tell, but about that kind of hammer, and about why all German framers, timber framers, roofing guys and many others are using that particular kind of hammer, what they use it for, why it's designed the way it is, and some other things as well. Alright, I really hope we will see us in the next episode of Timber Timo.